Yes, please.
Sorry, I was wondering if you could tell me the significance.
Could you? Actually, you've got the microphone.
Yeah.
Right.
Could you tell me the significance of the name Ahmadiyya?
Ahmad, yes.
Yeah. Could.
The significance, again, this is a very relevant question which should be well understood by Christians of all the people of the earth, particularly by Christians. In the Holy Quran, there are two prophecies mentioned in relation to the Old Testament and the New Testament. In relation to the Old Testament, the prophecy is that of a prophet with a fiery law in his hand, with the glory, with majesty, with something which spreads, with a sort of grandeur and rapidly, like at the time of Moses. So according to the Holy Quran, when you study the Old Testament, you will find a prophet mentioned like unto Moses who would come, and his description as somewhat what I have already explained to you. At the same time, the Holy Quran says, but his prophecy in the New Testament by Jesus was differently worded. His name was mentioned as Ahmad, not Muhammadim as written in the Old Testament. Now this again is a debatable issue, I must tell you. The current translations of the Old Testament have changed the word Muhammadim into praiseworthy, while previously they used to keep this word intact. Particularly at the time of the revelation of the Quran, there was no translation of the Bible in any language which changed this word into a translatable word. It was presented as a proper noun, Muhammadim. The present day scholars, some of them, object against this claim of Muslims by saying that this is a plural and the names are not plural. The proper nouns are not plural. But they forget that in Hebrew, in other original languages in which it was translated, it was a custom that out of respect, even proper nouns were pluralized. So, leaving the debate aside, this is what the Holy Quran says is the first appearance of Prophet Muhammad is mentioned in the Old Testament in relation to his similarities to Moses. The second appearance is mentioned not in the Old Testament but in the New Testament, and there he is given the name of Ahmad. Paraclete or Parkalith are the translations of the word Ahmad, but Ahmed is also found in the main text of the Bible, which was found in the monastery of Damascus, Syria. It's called Syrian something, Syrian text or whatever it is. It's the first authentic text, the first reliable text of Old and New Testament, which was discovered around perhaps in 4th century BC or AD or thereabout, from a monastery in Syria. So this is the most reliable and most often quoted version of the Testament, Old Testament and New Testament. In that text which was discovered, you find the word Emet, E-M-E-T, which again is attempted to be translated, but it is not a translatable word, it's a proper noun according to Islam. It is Ahmad, like Muhammad is the version of Muhammad. So similarly, according to the Holy Quran, the word Ahmad is found mentioned in the New Testament, and that is by Jesus Christ himself. So how could a prophet be exactly similar to Moses and exactly similar to Jesus Christ? It's impossible. So many scholars before Ahmadiyya Jamaat have also interpreted this to mean that the first manifestation of Islam would be in the person of Prophet Muhammad, who is given two titles now. First Muhammad and second Ahmad. And the second would be, again, his manifestation, but in the form of a reformer who would be similar to Jesus Christ in his attitude to religion, but being a different person, his manifestation would be referred to as the manifestation of Prophet Muhammad, because he would not bring a new faith. He would be completely subordinate to his master Muhammad. So sometimes the master's name is given to a perfect slave. So according to this explanation, in accordance with this explanation, we consider Ahmadiyyat to be that distinct manifestation of Islam which was referred to as the manifestation of Ahmad. So the Ahmadiyyat does not relate us to Mirza Ghulam Ahmad. This is a misunderstanding. It relates us to Muhammad as mentioned also by the name of Ahmad in the Holy Quran, and also according to the claim of the Holy Quran by the New Testament. Right? Okay. Thank you. Now the Hartley Pool Group. Assalamu alaikum. You are Rani?
Yes, I am.
Yes, yes.
Last week I watched a program about the Turin Shroud, which showed a team of people testing its authenticity. After lengthy investigation and experiment, they put forward a theory saying that it could have been the result of a photographic experiment carried out at a much later date than believed before. Could you please give your opinion and thoughts about this?
Right.
And I do appreciate that you might not have watched the program.
You see, this is a very important question which is already being studied, and a well documented and scientific answer will be published in Review of Religions very soon now. We are ready for that. I've got the books written in criticism of their claim that the study by NASA and some Catholic representatives have found that this is a fake. Now the major problem they faced was that if it was a fake, how could this be a photograph instead of painting? The concept of photography was not yet born, and no instruments were yet invented which would have enabled man of that age, of 11th or 12th century, to fake a photographic image. Now all the critics have taken this up very seriously, and they say that to bypass this objection, which is very valid and which cannot be genuinely answered by any sensible person, they have created the impression that artificially photography could be created in that age, and a sort of crude photography could have resulted in this. Now imagine, a few hundred years before camera was invented, before the concept of photo pictures was ever born, somebody conceived a system of photography to create a fake. It is as absurd as anything on earth can be. It's impossible. On the contrary, what possibly could have created at the time of Jesus Christ, that is understandable. There is no question of any fake. So, like the experimenters on this subject, for instance, the Pia, the first photographer who photographed this shroud and was amazed to find it to be in the negative, created a great uproar in the community of religion as well as in the community of scientists, in the community of religious people as well as the community of the scientists. The main thing, the most important thing about this shroud picture is that it is not a positive image. It is a negative image. And no fake artist can even today paint a negative image. the subtleties of differences of shades between black and white, and so many possible, representations of colors, not only between black and white, but yellow and green and in between and so on. The scientists admit that even today it is impossible for an artist who knows the art of photography to paint a negative image. It would be absurd. When it will be turned into positive, then you will see how he has failed to do it. At a time when the idea was not born, for someone, just for the sake of making a fake relic, to have gone through all the trouble of conceiving a system and having seen it work, why didn't he tell the rest of the world that I am one of the greatest inventors of the time? It's all absurd. It's just a lame excuse. It's impossible. But is it possible to have occurred genuinely? This is the question. And on this PR, when he revealed to the Academy of Sciences in France his findings about the image and its message on the shroud, set a team of researchers in motion. Pierre himself also experimented, and the experiments were carried out with a view to understand the effect of that ointment which was applied upon the body of Jesus Christ. Did it have a photosensitive material or not? What happened afterwards? If a picture was made accidentally by that ointment on the cloth which was touching it, almost wrapped around, but practically touching all the parts of the skin. If it was created, why it was not wiped out by the exposure to sun later on? Because if a negative is created, it has to be fixed as well. So where did the fixer come from? All these questions have been well taken up as a challenge and have been answered satisfactorily. Now, I don't want to go into detail because I can't anyway. The time left is only just 2-3 minutes. So, let it suffice that they experimented and reproduced such a photo. A plate was created with exactly the same ointment. It was exposed to the sunlight through an image, and the picture created was a negative of the image through which it was exposed. And it was so surprising that this could have naturally been created by some phenomenon. With what phenomenon this was responsible? It is claimed that when the earthquake came and the stone or the rock on the mouth of the sepulchre is known to have been through the waves of the earthquake dislodged for a while, and then again come back and sit tightly on the mouth of the sepulchre. When this happened, the time enough was given for the natural light to permeate into the cave and create that image and activate the photosynthetic material within, which was a component of that ointment, Then they know ammonia was released during the earthquake, and ammonia was also essential by itself. The constituents were not capable of taking a full picture, could not be turned into a full photosynthetic material. So photosensitive material was created with the influence of ammonia, which is found in plenty under the Palestinian terrain, and the subsoil is full rich of such ammonia elements. But how was it fixed? then also it is reported that sulfur fumes followed. And in earthquakes, sulfur fumes are almost a rule. They always emerge from crevices and openings. And sulfur working on that newly created image would work as the fixer. Once sulfur was given a time, a chance or an opportunity to work on this newly created photosynthetic image, it could fix it permanently, and that is the process of development which we know today. Now they have proved it, they have made such images. So we do not require a fake artist to produce the shroud if it were genuine. The natural circumstances as have been well recorded make us believe that this is possible, and it did happen. So the image, if you study, is a sort of crude photography, which is a result of direct touch of material on which the image is transferred. And that material is, of course, has been made photosensitive. I have been using wrong terms by mistake. I used to say photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a different thing altogether. Photosynthesis means the transfer of energy, sun energy, into available food energy for living forms. But what I had in mind throughout, let me rectify myself, it was photosensitiveness of the material, together with ammonia, could and has created such images in the laboratories today. And sulfur fumes have worked as fixers. So this is the whole story of the shroud as we read it. The critics of this experiment have written books. I received just a big volume written by two critics of the shroud investigation by NASA. Only yesterday, from America came. I have not yet read it, but I have read other materials, and I know that all this is a propaganda by vested interests. It's impossible for Christianity of the current brands, not only Catholicism but almost all brands, to accept that image on the twin shroud to be genuine and yet reject its message. It is the message which is so difficult to swallow, because the message delivered by that image is that whoever was wrapped in that shroud was yet alive. He was not dead. His wounds were still bleeding. And similarly, other messages which one reads make one believe that the concept of Jesus having died upon cross and has been resurrected later on is belied by the image of Christ on that shroud. The concept born out of this image is simply this, that a man reached the verge of death, and it is a case of miraculous survival, not a revival. So this is what hurts, and that is why attempts are being made to obscure this study. I'm answering you, but I don't mean that nobody has a right to disagree. They have, of course, everybody has. But I'm sure if somebody studies all the material in favor and against, the argument which I presented is so overwhelming against fraud that no one who is unprejudiced can afford to disagree with this. That it's not a fraud, it's a genuine case.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now they tell me the time is already over by how many minutes? 4 or 5 minutes? But whatever it is, you will be able to accommodate it, I hope.
If you wish to record more, we can take in the next program.
Beg your pardon?
We can take the program next week if you want to record more for more time.
But would I have time? That's the point. I inquire from downstairs my office about my next appointment. If I can afford to sit longer, perhaps I would love to. But if, of course, you also like to sit longer, or we could postpone it to another visit, maybe. What's the consensus of opinion?
Well, I think the ladies from Hartlepool always like to come and
You know, the other thing is, you may have already exhausted your questions which you have in mind.
Go on.
Okay. The green signal is given to me. We can go on. So anyone else from Hartlepool particularly, because you have not been given chance so far.
Assalamu alaikum, President.
Wa alaikum salam.
There are many crimes committed these days, burglaries, muggings, and the more serious crimes of murder.
Would you kindly bring this closer to you, please?
And the more serious crimes of murder and rape and sexual abuse seem to be on the increase, with children and the elderly seeming to be the most vulnerable. Do you think there should be corporal punishment, or in the case of murders, hanging should be brought back? Or do you think there is another way to change society?
I think none of the solutions suggested by you can be effective, because the causes lie much deeper than the plane of punishment. The plane of punishment is try to wipe out the effects of something, like cleaning the floor and things, scrubbing the walls and so on and so forth. While the filth in itself, if it grows from within and appears on the surface much after its generation or creation, if that is ignored, if you don't understand the causes of all this, then this is just a meaningless attempt. You see, when you increase the punishment or make it stiffer, you must also realize that the agencies which are responsible for the implementation of these punishments are also moving towards corruption, sitting on the same platform. It's like quicksand, but a moving platform of quicksand which is swallowing everybody and goes on moving without anybody realizing that we are doing it in totality. So the police standards are also going down the drain as much as that of the criminals. And political standards are also going down the drain as much as that of the rest of the sections of society. The question is much more serious than it seems at surface. The basic answer, if you want one single answer, according to me, is that the emphasis on answerability is the beginning of the question. And what is meant by accountability or answerability? Is it possible to increase the importance of realization in human beings of their being answerable and questionable before the society, while at the same time they are being told that it's not important for you to believe that you are answerable to God. You are accountable for your action to God, and there will be another judgment and sort of judgment after your death. So there are two opposite movements and they influence each other. It's impossible for a society to remain consciously answerable while on the religious side they have completely lost faith in accountability, or growingly they are losing faith in accountability. Strange paradoxes appear, strange contradictions raise their heads. For instance, in the British schools nowadays and colleges, particularly in schools, the children are told to feel free to do whatever they like as far as the immorality and their personal right to do whatever they like is concerned in relation to their parents' faith, the religions and views on morality. They are supported so strongly against the conventional values of morality of their own parents that if a girl wants to insist on her behavior and the parents take exception against this, the social coverage, the social benefits would reach the threshold of that house themselves without being stirred up much. While other, the Englishmen, the Scottish, the Irish would be found drifting homeless in the streets, even in this extreme cold. But if a case comes to the knowledge of the social departments that a Muslim girl or a Christian or a Hindu girl or another girl from Asia has found it difficult to live with the parents who object to her immorality, they will reach out, they will issue warning to the parents, will take away that girl and say, live as you like, there's no right. Now this is one message, that you are free. But particularly this message becomes stronger when they reach majority. When they become adults, then they are told that, a hoot with what they say. You're free, do whatever you like. This is a free society, you're born free. And no parents have a right to interfere and tell you that you are questionable for your behavior. But at the same time, another message is delivered. It is said that as far as the laws of the land are concerned, as long as you were not adult, you could trifle with them and yet escape unhurt, unpunished, because you were junior, you did not understand things much. But as you reach majority, when you reach your adulthood, then you must prepare yourself for full accountability. You will be severely dealt with for any break of the law of the land. It is a man-made law. You see the contradiction between God-made laws and man-made laws and the difference of emphasis? I mean, this is not just a secular attitude, it is a destructive suicide by the secularists themselves, because the question of answerability in one's conscience is only born in relation to the concept of and the belief of God. Otherwise, what is hidden, what is not seen, is an area which is the area of your freedom. And whatever intentions you have, if they flourish unchecked by the belief in somebody who knows what is happening, by the belief that you will be held responsible for not only your actions, but your thoughts, your contemplations, your scheming about crimes, then just the thought later on of a society which has made its own laws and your awareness that you must be loyal to those laws is not born. It cannot be, it has no logic. So the more not secular is a different term, I suspect that term, the more permissive a society becomes, permissive based on the concept of there being no accountability, because there is no God. Or if there is God, He will forgive. That sort of thing. That attitude promotes the same attitude in the direction of man-made laws, where you feel far more secure. Because if you had believed in God and accountability, then you would always be conscious of you being observed. You could not break a law of morality without realizing, without a pang of conscience within you, without realizing through that pang that you have done something wrong. And you must make some corrective measures, you must repent at least. No such natural checks would be applied in case of man-made laws. And then you would say, as long as I can't be seen, it's okay. If this is the end all, this life here, then why shouldn't I enjoy life as others do? Why should the televised image of life not be turned into reality by me? The televised image of life belonging to Hollywood or other, posh, rich, billionaire societies in American townships and cities and elsewhere, and even here in England. That image is so wonderful, where if you are clever, you can escape. If you are not clever, you will not. But more often than not, there are possibilities that somebody can escape. But it is not just the belief in your ultimate escape as you observe it from the study of police cases and the crime and punishment. It is a vague psychological belief in invisibility which promotes crime. And the invisibility barrier can only be broken by the belief in God. You see, this is the dilemma of the secular society of today. When a criminal acts as a criminal, his psychology is simply this, that as far as I know the circumstances, I will not be detected. And I can run away, I can escape. And that promotes him to the acts of crime and emboldens him when the criminals grow in number so much so that they become unmanageable by the police forces available in the country. So you have to draw heavily from the pockets of the taxpayers, from other productive areas of spending to this non-productive but essential area of spending, which is a negative check upon the peace of the land. Now, when you hear such cases reported in the press, in the in the television, etc., that ministers do this and that man does it, and the church religious leaders do it, and the Muslim mullahs have been enjoying themselves here freely, and when they read about the leaders of Saudi Arabia living a different life in America or in England or elsewhere, then the general message, delivered to the people everywhere is, live while you can and enjoy while you can, and forget about these small, meaningless objections from the moral point of view. You are going to live only once. Why to live like a fool? Enjoy. And with this message delivered, and with the trend of the people unmistakably in that direction, it is impossible for the lawmakers to bring out with an ingenious idea of stunning the crime in its progress. They cannot block the passage. It's going to increase everywhere until the society will become miserable. And it is becoming miserable. Britain of 50s, when I came here first, is so different from the Britain of today. One may smile, but unfortunately it's a subject worth crying over. It's not a case for smiles. I remember I used to sometimes forget things of different natures, articles, books, etc., during my underground journeys from here to there. And without fail, every time I lost a thing, it was returned to me through lost property office. Without exception. And I found the police at that time to be so principled, disciplined, yet courteous. It was unbelievable for a policeman to misbehave towards public. He would say, sir, and yet would not let you run away. And he would be the first to reach you at the time of crisis. You know, I remember I walked on foot from that Golden Greens, and were next to Golden Greens is a posh area. Huh? No, Hendon is not a posh area. Hampstead, yes. From Hampstead to London Mosque, because we were sitting in a very interesting intellectual meeting of different friends from universities, etc. And I didn't realize that on Sundays these underground trains stopped before the normal schedule of the weekdays. So I missed it. So I walked, but in full confidence. I was absolutely safe, because it was our experience. Whenever you needed the British police, it would always be there somehow. They had that very strange type of omnipresence. But nowadays, you miss them when you need them. You never miss them when you don't need them. When you're not committing a crime, they will be after you, and they will be so harsh in treating you and investigating as if you had already committed a crime. So when this is happening to your police forces, and more license is given to them, and more freedom to act and apprehend anybody they like in the name of protection from crime, they are abetted to become criminals themselves. And the same is everywhere. You know, there in those days, I left some valuable things, including my camera, in my car, which was an old model car, which even if I had locked, could be opened by somebody, but it was not locked. For 3 months during that very severe winter in 1956, the car remained standing outside in a busy road, and no one cared to take away a single item which I had left there. Well, they could have attacked it, like cameras and some other things. I returned from a trip, and there were quite a few valuable things which I had collected during that trip. Nowadays, it's impossible. The Russian delegation came to us at the annual conference this year, and they went to see Harrods. They didn't have enough money to buy from Harrods, but they were so fascinated by the idea of there being something very posh and very special. And as they returned, whatever they had bought at other places was gone. The van was broken into and everything was wiped out. So this is what is happening to you, unfortunately. And no measures at scraping the crime reserves from the top would ever be successful in discouraging crime. You know, the figures which are quoted on television by conservatives and others, and they're all fake. You know why? Because they say they're just juggling with figures and facts. They say that crime has been reduced, the incidence of crime is reduced because of the police figures, that less mugging, less breaking into the houses, and they did not tell the public, which is our own experience. Most of the crimes which have been reported by Ahmadis in this area of breaking into the houses have not been officially registered. The small things, they happen. Take care of yourself. Somebody is mugged. It's yes, it happens. And where is the proof, and so on and so forth. So if the policy of the government is to register a less number of incidents of crime, then the figures become fake. They can't be compared with anything. And the governments nowadays are capable of doing it, I believe. So I'm sorry, this is a pessimistic answer. But the optimistic part is already mentioned by me. Bring back the society to the awareness of a creator, the awareness of your accountability. Even if not that, at least follow the Japanese system which have they introduced for the last some years in the schools. Without reference to a religion, they are trying to teach morality at the school levels. It's more difficult for them because they don't have the concept of God as we have elsewhere. But for England, it's so easy. Don't permit the Muslims to teach Islam in schools in the areas of beliefs and dogmas. They should be totally banned, because it is there that the differences ultimately turn into ugly incidents of hatred and non-tolerance and so on and so forth. But morality is almost common. That is a universal principle. So you should promote here in the British society religious morality. Even if it's Hindu, even if it's Buddhist, even if it's Sikh, whatever you call it, the basic concept of morality remains universal. And no one religion on earth would tell the students here that you should lie, you should steal, you should be unfaithful, you should be irresponsible in your behavior and so on and so forth. You should insult the elders and so on. So morality it is to which we must return. With reference to religion, it's easier. Right? Thank you. Yes, please. Wa alaikum salam.
Progression or increase in knowledge is measured by certain stages. For example, in this country we have A-levels, graduation, PhD, etc. Is there a way one can measure one's own spiritual progression and ascertain that we are moving on the right lines?
You see, there are no such degrees ever awarded by religious institutions which are genuine and honest. Because then when they go back to their sources, they learn whatever they learn from the illiterate, almost practically, unlettered people who had no degrees. So this, I don't believe that anybody can be a PhD in religion at all. Religion is something of a deeper experience of soul. And without that deeper personal experience, you cannot understand the philosophy of any religion. And this cannot be inculcated among the students in any university. This cannot be obtained by anyone through mechanical exercises or study of books. It is in relation to God. The first step towards this is to always monitor oneself in his creation at the level of his thoughts as they are about to be created at the formative stage. Are they true? Are they based on truth? Are they based on absolute justice? Or they are mixed up with ulterior motives, nationalism, racism, thatism, personal interest and so on. So at the level of the formation of human thoughts, there has to be a check applied of the fear of God. The check of fear of God can also be applied by such societies who try to ignore the existence of God, yet try to gain the best out of religion. For them, I would advise them at least somehow they should be told that if you want to really be a good man, to grow a good man, an excellent member of the society, keep monitoring yourself at the stage of your thoughts as they are formed. If you always draw right conclusions based on absolute justice, if the thoughts are generated without any other influences except the the common sense which is gifted to every man equally in one sense, of course. Some people apparently have less common sense, some have more common sense, but I say they are delivered equally in the sense that as long as they remain pure and they have not fallen under the influence of the society and they have not fallen under the rigid influences of some dogmatic religions, their common sense remains intact. And basically it is the same everywhere in the world. So that is your guide. The first step towards training yourself to be to grow into a correct man, a correct person, I should say, is to start monitoring yourself right from that level. Now, this could be taught as a science in all educational institutions. The only objection is taken when you begin to talk of God and God having created a certain brand of his views as religions. Then the fights begin and they're endless. So you should bypass this area. You should get down to the level of the basic universal moral concept of humanity. And then I hope you will get that degree which you are referring to. And the Holy Quran refers to that degree. Perhaps you have not noticed this. According to the Holy Quran, the religious education begins with this inevitable loyalty to truth. The Holy Quran claims in the very first verse of Surah Al-Baqarah, which is the first chapter after Surah Fatiha, which is sort of the Holy Quran summarized. So we do not count it generally as first chapter, while it is the first chapter, which is a small chapter of 7 verses. But the real text begins with the Surah Al-Baqarah. And there, in the very first verse, the Holy Quran, speaking on this subject, says, this is a perfect book, no doubt. There is no doubt in it, and there is no doubt in this claim. Yet it can lead to the righteous, to the right path, only those who are true, who are God-fearing. Now, this claim has created such a dilemma, and the great Muslim scholars have been involved in trying to resolve this problem. The religions come to teach fear of God, and the Holy Quran claims that unless you have the fear of God, you can't be taught anything. So whether the chicken is first or the egg is first, this time-old dilemma is again presented by the Quran according to their view, and they try to resolve it through different angles. But I think there is no dilemma at all, because the word taqwa, which is fear of God, has been interpreted and should be interpreted according to its context and application of upon a situation. Here, the simple definition of taqwa is in English terms to have the ability to call a spade. That's all. If you have that, then you do not require any intense religious knowledge or training. But you can't get any religious training unless you have that ability to call a spade a spade. So this is the meaning of the first test for the admission to the school of religion, the primary you may call it, or kindergarten. But you cannot gain admission unless you have this fundamental basic prerequisite for that admission. Then the Holy Quran says the taqwa grows in you with the help of the knowledge you gain, and they support each other, and they proliferate with the passage of time until you reach the level of Salihin. Salihin are defined as the those, let's say, who have passed the GEC level or the first basic level for the higher education. And Salihin means in most of their acts they're rightly inclined, and the inclination has been rightly translated into actions. So this Saleh is applicable to both these areas, the intentions plus the realization of the intentions. So if more often than not you think rightly and act rightly, then you are called Saleh, the first degree or the first certificate. Then comes Shaheed. Shaheed is someone who begins to see God while he is not seeable, not visible in any form, with such deep faith that for him there is no difference between life here and the life there. Both are realities, and such strong realities that you can consider death as just a threshold. You cross over to the other side, step into another house. These are the people who are always ready to lay their lives for the sake of their belief, because there it is not that somebody tortures them to death or kills them or murders them because of the difference. That they could be referred to as Shaheed, but here the definition of the Quran applies to those who willingly, having different choices, who could escape death by changing their views and beliefs, would see squarely death in its eyes and say, all right, we are ready because we know we are going to live again, and that would be a more permanent sort of existence than the life here on earth. They are called Shaheed. Shaheed means witness. So instead of finding a word like martyr, in Islam the term is a witness. That is the second degree which is granted to those who proceed in the direction of greater knowledge and greater practice. Then comes the third, which is very high degree, let's call it a postgraduate degree, which is Siddiq. Siddiq means that as far as they know, they do not consciously deceive themselves or deceive others, who are so true that truth has gone deep into their fibers, in their making. In every situation they have to be true, they have to emerge as true under every trial. And here it is a very important thing which is claimed by the Holy Quran, because whomsoever we consider to be true, we may be right in declaring somebody to be true, but it is always a relative question. True in that circumstances, untrue in those circumstances, true more often, untrue less often, marketable in certain areas, not marketable in some others. But Siddiq is a term which is applicable only to such people who are never in the market for selling their faith for the sake of any worldly gains or commodities. So this is the third higher degree. After that, the only degree left is that of prophets and messengers. And that is not only just a degree, but also an employment. So it is not just that you qualify to be a prophet and you become a prophet. It is also related to the need for a prophet and need for a certain type of prophet. If a man is reached the stage of Siddiq, he becomes available to God for trusting him, because if somebody delivers a message from God, he has to be absolutely trustworthy. And if he may fail here or there, such a person will be unsafe to represent God. So Siddiqiyat is the stage where human beings are trained, and with the help of themselves, of course, trained by religions, but with their own inner effort, joining hands with religious efforts, to reach that stage where they are absolutely true. Then, if the needs be, then prophets could be chosen from among them. And the difference between a Siddiq and a prophet is not that of quality of truth, because all prophets are defined as Siddiq. They have to be Siddiq, otherwise they can't be prophets. But all Siddiqs are not prophets, because they are not commissioned. So if someone from that higher level is commissioned, it is not just a degree then, it is an appointment. So any leader who is appointed by God himself, whether he is a law-bearing prophet or a non-law-bearing prophet, is a class unto himself. So this is the fourth level of attainment of knowledge as well as purification, according to the Holy Quran. Please, you have a question? Well, Sam?
One of the things that attracted me to become an MD was the importance that was placed on education and the pursuance of knowledge. Yet recently I saw on the news that in a North African country, I think it was Algeria, I'm not 100% on that, Islamic fundamentalists have declared that once they got into power in the next elections, they were going to close down all the schools for girls. How can they use the Quran to justify that act?
They can't.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
It's impossible. But you are talking of a possible future, a danger to the future of Algeria. But this has happened partly in Afghanistan already. The Taliban, who are an enigma in themselves for those who try to understand in view of the statements of the government of Pakistan, the government of Afghanistan, government of America, etc., that they have nothing to do with them. So they are enigma because they are already using the most modern weapons in their warfare against the established system in Afghanistan. They have planes, they have anti-aircraft guns, they have most modern rockets and other things. And yet enigma because Pakistan, if they are right, they say, no, we have nothing to do with it, we are not supporting them. Where they get it from, we don't know. Russia says no. Of course they wouldn't. Everybody should believe Russia in this much at least. And Iran dissociates itself from them. And America says, we have nothing to do with this. Let them do whatever they like. But they represent an attitude which indicates in the direction of Saudi Arabia, of Pakistan, Iran, America, severally or collectively maybe. And their understanding of Islam is so horrid. I can't believe any sane leadership in any state in the free world to support them. Yet because politically they do not like the regime in power, so they would go to any extreme to exploit Islam and extremism in Islam in Afghanistan, even if it damages the future and destroys the future of whatever regime comes into power and destroys the future of Afghans themselves. So they are doing it not because they condone this view, because they know there is a harshness in the character of the Afghans, a rigidity in the mullah, which has become a symbol of Islam for Afghanistan. If they use it, they would create greater fear in the minds of the common people, and they would dare not oppose such a movement because it would have the license and sanction from God. So all this fraud is being played upon people in humanity, and they refer to that as fundamentalism. It is the, if at all, they are a symbol of unfundamentalism, if there is such a term. It doesn't, I know it isn't. They have nothing of fundamentals of Islam. And those in other religions who are not fundamentalists now but used to be in their history, they had no relationship with the cause of the religion or the religion itself which they were pleading. What was the relationship between Christianity and the Inquisition movement of Isabella and Ferdinand? Of course not. What was the relationship between Christianity and the burning of 5,000 women, poor women, in the name of Christianity in England here? Because they were considered to be sorcerers. Sorceresses, is that right? Witches and sorceresses, yes. But at that time it was understood. So you should use the term fundamentalism with caution. I say they have nothing to do with the roots of the religion which they claim to represent. Every religion is the softest and the most humane at its roots. It begins to stiffen as it goes along the passage of time, unfortunately. Right? Anything else, anyone?
May I ask, please?
Please do.
Our group are very much teachers
Yes.
of religious education.
I see, I thought they were students and you were the teacher. They're all teachers?
I'm a learner. I don't stop learning. What advice would you give to teachers of religious education in dealing with Muslim children in the classroom?
I think an advice which would disarm the fundamentalist influence over them. You should advise them that according to our understanding of the Quran, you have to be true and honest. Otherwise, you can't be a true Muslim at all. You can't learn anything in Islam, as I have just already suggested. And it's impossible to be true to God without being true to His creation. So learn this most essential lesson from Islam, that you should be true to God, true to human beings, and you cannot be true without being able to justify your beliefs and your actions. So if you can't, then don't fall prey to dogmatism. Otherwise, you will be contradicting your faith in the Quran itself. So in this way, you will not arouse any suspicion of your being antagonistic to Islam. Yet somehow you will be able to draw them away from the tendency of the so-called fundamentalism. Secondly, I think you should emphasize the role of morality, not only in the area of truth as the fundamental thing, but also in other areas, and tell them that if you are a Muslim, you should behave like a Muslim, and there your behavior should be like a Christian as well. Because in the basic understanding of morality, there is no difference between Judaism, Christianity, Hinduism and so on. So become moral. Without being moral, you can't become godly. Dogma can never make you anyone godly. The image of piety which they conceive of God, when it is translated into the reality of their own conduct, only then one can become godly and not otherwise. So if you spread this idea to make it more digestible to students of different levels, I think that's the best attitude you should acquire. Now I'm told that perhaps it should be time. Yes, because I have to go to the prayer hall, the mosque to lead the Zuhr prayer within 10 minutes, and I have to prepare for that as well. So I would take leave of you and thank you so much for coming, and I would love you to come again if you possibly can.
Thank you.
And thank you, and convey my regards to the people at Hartlepool, all the friends and acquaintances as well, right? Assalamu alaikum.